So, I will give you today some rules or some secrets that my Chinese father gave me about how to be rich. And rule number one is this. This is number one. And these made the differences in my life. The biggest secret of all is this. And I think this starts the difference. MC stands for middle class. The poor and the middle class work for money. They go to school so they can find a nice, safe, secure job so they can get paid. And what my Chinese father did was train me completely different. He said, and that's the difference. It is a defining difference. Same as when one father said to me, find a good job or a good company, and the other father says, find a good company to buy. And this will start to make the difference here. I will give you some stats for those of you. How many people remember the DISC from yesterday with, what's his name? But anyway, Brian, yes, Brian. This is in 1990. This is the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. At age 65 in 1990, and these are Americans who are the World War II generation. These are the stats for them. This is my father's generation. Out of 100 people at age 65, 1990, 25 are dead. So 1 out of 4 has died. 51, or the gross majority, have incomes of $6,000. And these are people who grew up during the biggest boom years of America, the same as you guys are right now, the biggest boom years. 20 out of 100 have incomes between $6,000 and $35,000. 3 have incomes over $35,000. And only 1 is rich. That is not a very good stat for at one time the richest country in the world. So what I will be doing here is basically giving you the attitude or ideas of this one person. So, rule number 2. This is what Michael's father taught me. The secret of the rich. How many people, mind your own business, how many people know who a gentleman named Ray Kroc was? Okay. For those who do not know, Ray Kroc was a man who founded a company called McDonald's. Now, my good friend Keith Cunningham was in the MBA program at the University of Texas, and Ray Kroc came to speak to the MBA program. And Ray Kroc stood up in front of some of the brightest young minds in the 60s, actually the 70s, and he said to the MBA class, he said, ladies and gentlemen, what business am I in? And all the students just laughed. And what they laughed about, somebody raised their hands up, obviously you're in hamburgers. And Ray Kroc says, no, I am not in the business of hamburgers. My business is real estate. The only reason Ray Kroc created franchises was that so somebody would buy the franchise, but he owned the property. And one of the biggest shortcomings I find with many Americans is that this is the big mistake they make here. This is income. What Ray Kroc was saying was this to the class. He says, this here is not my business. This is my profession. And so what many people do is when I ask my next door neighbor, the international banker, I said, what business are you in? He says, I'm a banker. That's not his business. That's his profession. And the reason he's having a hard time right now is that what Michael's father taught me was that this is your business. And what he meant by your business, whether you're an employee or not, that has got to be your business. It has got to be your name on it. If you work, I used to work for Xerox. Was Xerox my business? Was it? No. Belonged to the shareholders. And so at a very early age, what I began to do was stack this one. So my profession was sales, the same as Ray Kroc, but my business was real estate. And so I'm just asking you right now is, as you're in these boom years, never forget to take care of your business. Don't mind somebody else's business. You've got to take care of yourself. Does that make sense, you guys here? Hello? Yeah, you've got to take care of yourself. If you don't, nobody else will. Because what's happened in America, and I'm in the stock market, is when IBM announces 80,000 people laid off, does the price of the stock go up or down? Up. That should tell people who are employees something. Now, 2 weeks ago, the stock market plummeted. Why did it plummet? Because they announced employment was going where? Up. And obviously, in the world, there are two different kinds of people. The rich and those who aren't rich. And if you're going to make it, my point of view is this, you may as well make it. Take care of your own business. All of us are employees. Right now, my profession is public speaker, but my business is still what? Real estate. It is my business. And the reason it's my business, it's got my name on it. Today, this belongs to Richard Tan. I work for you and Richard Tan. I am an employee today. We're all employees. But you must mind your own business. So, I will go into what assets are for those, some of you know, some of you don't know, is that there are different kinds of assets. And these are some of the more common ones. Like I said, my favorite is real estate. Others are stocks, bonds, intellectual property. Intellectual property are things like books. Like Andrew was just up here. His book is one of his assets. 1 million copies. It's working for him while he sleeps. Mutual funds and businesses. Now, the thing that my Chinese father said to me is this. He says, there are people who own businesses and people who own a job. And he said the reason when you know you own a job is much like a doctor or an accountant. In other words, they're not free. They must do the work. If you don't have to work, you then own a business. My next door neighbor, what he does is he owns businesses. When I ask him what his profession is, he says, I am a business operator. That's his profession. But his business is business. What he has is he owns 12 car washes. 10 years ago, he was broke. Today, he owns 12 car washes. He takes a paycheck from each one of those car washes of $20,000 a month per car wash. In other words, his income over here is $240,000 US a month, whether he works or not. That's why he gets rich. He's also my neighbor. Interestingly enough, both he and I do not live in big houses. We live in very small houses. The reason is we don't like large liabilities. My Chinese father said, back in 1972, I bought my first condominium. I thought I was hot stuff. I had saved some money. I bought this condominium. I paid $30,000 for it, and I sold it for $48,000. I made $18,000. I thought I was King Tut. So I took that $18,000, I went and bought 3 more condominiums, and I bought them for $20,000 and sold them for $48,000. So I was making about $90,000. Meanwhile, I was working for Xerox. And at Xerox, I was being paid $30,000 a year. The main reason I worked for Xerox was I needed the bank to loan me the money. So here's my job. It's paying me $30,000 a month, and over here I'm making $90,000. When my sales manager told me he was going to fire me, I said, don't do me any favors. Because I can make more money in this column here. So then my Chinese father then laughed at me. He says, you're so typical Japanese. He says, you Japanese are terrible. He says, you guys pay retail. Chinese never pay retail. He said, in Hawaii, he says, here they are, a house is worth $100,000, the Japanese come in, they pay $300,000 for it. He says, you guys are not too bright. He says, don't ever pay retail. So Michael's father then taught me to do this. He says, this is the next rule. Those of you want to write it down. This is rule number 3, the secret of the rich. Create investments. Don't buy them. And this thing here then accelerated my wealth pretty much, because I wasn't buying anything, I was just creating them. So I'll give you an example of couple of very simple deals that anybody can do. Is back in 1992, America was in a terrible recession. The bank called me up and says, we got 5 houses. Would you buy them for us? It's for how much? I said, we'll sell them to you at a discount. I said, oh, very good. He says, for $5,000 down per house, over $25,000, I could buy all 5 houses. So this is the way it worked. I bought a house for $30,000. Deep discount because it was in what they call foreclosure. Somebody didn't pay the mortgage on them. I immediately marked the thing up to $60,000 and sell it. At that point, I sell it to the guy they took it from, too. So I'll show you something here. Where was that 30,000 created? It was created in the asset column. Now the big distinction here is this. How long would it take you to save $30,000? It would take a while, wouldn't it? And the reason for that is if you have a job, your income comes in here, what's the first line item expense on expenses? Taxes. In America, they're very high. So by the time somebody's trying to get $30,000 in here, these are called retained earnings or after-tax dollars. That's why most Americans can't make it, and our banks keep telling them, save money. They can't save money because they got too many expensive and too much doodah around here. They can't make it. So I created $30,000 times 5, or $150,000 in here. And what I created then was a thing called a note. And that $150,000, I then take 10% interest on. I don't want them to pay that thing off. Because what it's driving annually up here is $15,000 a year into my income column for 30 years. So that's how it was created. It's very simple. It took me about 2 hours to do the whole transaction. I forget what the number comes out to. It's approximately $90,000 times 5. So that's what my Chinese father was saying to me. He says, you create investments, you don't buy them. This is simple. Anybody could have done it. The next thing he taught me to do was this. He said, first, before you buy, is you expand the product. And a little while ago, I bought 80 acres of land for $115,000. Very good land, right next to a booming city. On the corner of the land was a little house here. So I sold the house for $150,000 with 4 acres on it. At that point, I divided up the land into approximately four other pieces. Then I sold each piece for $100,000. This was created again, not in the income column, but in the asset column. So at that point, $400,000 was created. Meanwhile, my neighbor, who's my banker, well, not my banker, but an international banker, he's going to me, he says, oh my God, I'm still looking for a job. And this is what the whole thing was talking about, was financial aptitude. There's no more job security. When people are screaming for job security, what they're really looking for is financial security today. So the faster I recommend learning it right now is because your future will be more stable. The last deal I did, and this, for those of you who like the stock market, there's a thing called IPOs. IPOs are initial public offerings when you take a stock public. Stock comes out, it goes out at $101.50. Now, it chugs along here. This is where the fundamental trader, technical traders pick it up, and you're kind of hoping it goes to $5 a share. If a mutual fund picks it up, it'll then go to $20 a share. And this is where the broad American public picks up their product. They pick it up in the form of a mutual fund paying full retail for it. It violates my Chinese father's bones. And what he taught me instead to do was pick it up in this area here. And so what I began doing under his tutelage was he had 5 founders. You create 5 million shares. Price per share, 0 at that moment. You take it to stage 1, you take it up to 10 cents per share. 5 million shares, now there's now 500,000, I think it's 500, didn't do well in math. So that's stage 1. By the time it gets to stage 2, this is where my friends come in. I sell it to them for 50 cents a share. Now they line up all day long to pick it up at 50 cents a share because stage 3 is the IPO. And so a person buying 100,000 shares, they're going to make $100,000 in about a month. And this is why the rich get richer. They operate in this arena here. Right now I'm bringing out a casino stock and a oil and gas company. This is where it's made at very high rates of speed, and then the public picks it up out of here. The other part, for those of you who understand the stock market, everybody gets really upset about a thing called insider trading. It's illegal over here, it's perfectly legal over here. Have I made my point? So there's this guy coming next year under the program. It's called Think and Grow Rich. The message I'd like to leave you with today is that if you really want to make money, the best way to do it is between your ears. Think. Don't work hard. So, as I close, there's a question I'm going to ask you all today. And the last thing I want to say about this IPO here is this. I know most of my middle class friends, they worry about money. I don't worry about money, I get excited. When you're carrying, just look at the numbers, the multiplication, the leverage on this thing. If I have 1 million shares, which cost me 0, and by the time it hits the IPO, it's worth $1.50, I've made $1.5 million. It hits $5 a share, and we're doing stock splits inside here. We're getting the money back at rapid rates of speed. It comes up here and make $5 million. Because instead of being worried about money, I get excited about it. It's not hard to do, but they don't teach us in school because they want to teach you to work hard. That's why I wrote my book. So this is my question as I close, is what is your winning formula? And what I mean by that is this. My dad, when he was downsized in 1970, his winning formula, being a school teacher, was go to school, study hard, look for a nice, safe, secure job. In America today, we have millions of people being downsized, and the world has changed, but what hasn't changed? What hasn't changed is their winning formula. Their idea, and what a winning formula is each and every one of us has a winning formula. My winning formula was don't do what everybody else is doing. That's part of my winning formula. Some of you out there, your winning formula is be good, do as you're told, take orders. Because that's how you survive. And the winning formula is each and every one of us has a way of thinking that we know we can survive from. That it is our best chance of making a success of ourselves. And unfortunately, here I am. I'm showing you some of these things here. This whole process takes 3 months. Puts $2 or $3 million in my pocket. What blocks most people from this thing called achievement is not that they don't want to achieve, is they're not willing to let go of their winning formula. Some of you will still go home and go back to work. You got to look at your formula. Is the formula like a recipe? Is it delivering all the money, happiness, fun, excitement you want? Or is your formula obsolete? The saddest thing about my dad, I didn't realize until after he died, about 1992, was he couldn't change his winning formula. Do I make any sense to you guys here? He was just doing what he knew best he could survive on, which was go to school, get a job. That's all he knew. Work hard. And if you want to be successful today, you've got to be willing to change your winning formula. Because things are changing rapidly here too, right? And if you hang on to your old winning formula, you ain't going to get there. And so all I'm saying here is this. I'm not saying follow my formula. This is my formula. But some of you going like, oh, I like that. I just showed you how you can make $1 million every other month very easily. But what's going to prevent people from doing that is the winning formula, your winning formula. So what happens is, I show you guys this. Some of you will go home, they'll say, oh, look at this. And the reason that upsets me is at that point you'll see it, but you won't do anything about it. I don't care if you do what I do. It's like Brian yesterday, his information, you go, oh, great information, but you don't do anything about it. To be an achiever, you've got to do something. Do that make sense, you guys here? You've got to use it. And what stops people is their winning formula. It's a formula that's obsolete right now. So, one of the things I